Jo, 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 willkommen bei der Familie Sekerci. Sag mal hallo.
Jo.
Hallo. Wir sind voll aus.
Ich hole dich wieder ab.
Es gab eine Explosion. Fahren Sie weiter.
Mein Mann hat sein Büro gleich da vorne.
Stehen bleiben!
Hast du dich bei den Todesopfern um ihren Mann?
Hat er Feinde? War er ein Muslim?
Bitte?
Sie wollen doch auch wissen, wer Ihre Familie getötet hat.
Das ist noch eine Türkengegend, wo das Büro von meinem Mann ist.
Doch, da war eine Frau, die hat ihr Fahrrad vor seinem Büro abgestellt.
Das war eine Deutsche. Sie war so deutsch wie ich bin.
Du hast recht gehabt. Es waren Nazis. Die Bullen haben die Täter erwischt.
Nicht die Fingerabdrücke der beiden Angeklagten.
Haben Sie noch weitere Fingerabdrücke gefunden? Also eine weitere tatbeteiligte Person?
Ich möchte, dass du morgen zu Hause bleibst.
Warum?
Es könnte hart für dich werden.
Mein Sohn verehrt Adolf Hitler. Was mein Sohn getan hat, ist boshaft.
Steht in der Polizeiakte, dass wir was bei dir gefunden.
These are my friends. Have you seen them?
I don't know these people.
Kennen Sie das? Was ist das hier für ein Symbol auf dem Banner?
Bringst dich doch nur in Schwierigkeiten.
Stell dir mal vor, die hätten mich und Rocco erwischt.
Nein.
Und Nuri hätte überlebt.
Nein.
Der hätte das ganze Geplänkel nicht mitgemacht.
Nein! Die werden ihre Strafe kriegen, das schwöre ich dir.
Everybody please give a round of applause for director and writer Fatih Akin and Diane Kruger.
Hi, thank you.
This amazing film, In the Fade, incredibly well made. Another job well done, sir. Really one of our best sitting on the stage right now, and one of the great actresses. I mean, the two of you together, it's a powerhouse, as the line said in the trailer. So let's talk about how you got together. How did you start? Where did the idea for the film come from?
Well, I started writing this in 2012. We had some problems, some issues in Germany with neo-Nazis. You know, they did some killings there, and some bomb attacks. And I realized that I could be, just because I am who I am, just because I look how I look, I could be a possible target for these people, and that bothered me. You know,
The targets were chosen at sort of at random, outside of ethnicity, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, how can we hit like the most people, you know, with bombs, nail bombs? And yeah, like I said, that bothered me, and somehow I had to express my anger, and so I wrote it down. And on a very early stage, Diane came to my mind. We met at the Cannes Film Festival in 2002, 12 it was, and we had a very nice chat. At the beach at night, both of us were drunk.
A chat about this film, or just a nice chat in general?
Just in general, because I love his films, and I was a big fan, and I had never done a film in Germany or in German, so it was the opportunity to meet him. So I went to his party to tell him, you know, please, if you ever have anything, I would love to work with you.
Wow. So you were a big fan of his work, and I mean, this is, like you said, this is your first sort of film in entirely in your native tongue, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. What was that like for you? Easier?
You know, it was awesome. I've been gone 25 years, and it really reconnected me to my roots, things that I started to forget, you know, a culture that came back to me. You know, it was funny because when I'm here, my friends always say, oh my God, you're so German, you know. But when I'm in Germany, I started to feel really American or French. And this movie really brought me back to my roots, and I felt very much in my place.
What was it like doing a performance like this? It's a really, for lack of a better word, it's a really heavy performance. Your character is going through a lot of trauma, a lot of tragedy, and emotionally, I would imagine it's slightly taxing.
It was really taxing, I think, for everyone. I mean, Fatih as well. But, you know, it is. I prepped this movie for a really long time back here in the US before moving to Germany for the film, meeting with a lot of self-help groups of victims, not just terrorism, but mostly murder. And you know, as weeks went on and time went on, you just, you know, you take that on. You've heard so many stories, you've seen so much unspeakable suffering, that by the time you started filming, it was all there, you know.
How did the two of you develop this character? Because she's so well drawn, down to her tattoos, down with how she deals with her pain, and her relationship with her husband who's passed away, who we, you know, initially meet in a jail cell wedding via like a cell phone footage. It's a really beautiful opening. So how did the two of you come up, like sort of draw this character out and flesh her out? Or was it all in your script initially?
There was a lot on the script based on my wife, you know. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, I love to travel, I like to see things. I would like to change the place where I'm living, but I cannot because I have the family, you know. So you try to see anything interesting, and if you can see it like in New York or Los Angeles, if you have to look for your material in your home, you start to write about your home, you know. So a lot of the elements of the character were based upon, for example, my wife or friends of her.
Did you know that it was based off of his wife a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, he told me, you know, and I met his wife. She's pretty awesome. Pretty badass, has a couple tattoos herself, you know, and they're an awesome couple, and they have 2 children. And I think he really, both of them, you know, are great parents, and I know that they would do anything for their kids, as I'm sure most people would. But a lot of my performance is informed through Fatih and through his relationship with his kids and his wife.
But it's not like I want you to play my wife.
No, I got that. Yeah.
I don't have those kind of problems, right?
That's,
you know?
But I your poor wife, if you did have those problems. Yeah. But that must have been a somewhat heavy experience for you making this film, because so much of this film is a woman dealing with the tragedy of losing her family. And whenever I think of loss and sort of death and pain, I never think about losing my own life. I think about the emotional experience that would have on the others who I assume loved me and would care if I was gone. So what was it like sort of directing those scenes and having that in the back of your mind?
I had this in my mind while I was writing it, you know. Once we start to work with Diane, I really have to say, like, Diane was really challenging me, you know, about concentration. I never met such a focused actress or actor in my whole career. She was so focused, and that was challenging me. Usually I'm the center of focus on my sets, but here there was another center. Mm-hmm. And once you try to keep up the concentration, you don't think too much about the emotional level, you know. You focus on, like, how do I translate the emotion? And this is kind of like helpful and healthy, because otherwise you would get lost in the emotional level.
Talk about, if you could, what I really love about the film is how you draw the story out and the details of the murder and where it goes afterwards. From the fact that it's, you know, we see in the trailer, so this isn't giving anything away, but the fact that it's neo-Nazis doesn't get revealed until really late, I think, into the first act, maybe even somewhere in the second act. And there's even more details about why it happened and where we're going until the final end shot of the film, when you realize what the movie, you sort of really realize in that final moment what the movie is actually about. Can you talk about writing a screenplay like that? Because I think most movies sort of know what they're about and try to establish that right away, and then are consistently trying to reaffirm what they're about afterwards, rather than sort of waiting until the final moment to let you know what it's about. Did that question make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I hope it makes sense. I hope my answer makes sense. So I was very lucky this time, because the image of the end, which we don't spoil here. You know.
I did it too, right? We talked about this in the green room. I was able to do it.
Right. You know, so I had the image of the end in my mind. I was like, this is a great end. And, you know, and so Diane and I kind of like wrote it or directed it or worked on it like backwards. We always knew about the end pretty early. And so whenever we had a discussion, you know, we could argue with the end, you know. Yeah, but, you know, the end will be like this, so that's why it doesn't make sense if we do it like that. That was the thing going back and forth between us, you know. Sometimes I missed the end, and she was reminding me to my own end, you know, and sometimes it was the opposite. And it's once you have it like that, if you have the idea for an end first, it's very helpful. It can be very helpful.
It's a brilliant script flipping on a certain audience and their expectations and their presumptions about people and revenge and political and policy as well, at least over the last like 25 years. Diane, with that end in sight and with such a big, I think, existential as well as political not motivation, but themes tied into the story, do you hold on to those things when you're making the film, or do you try to focus moment to moment as an actress what your character is going through in each scene?
Yeah, for me, I only wanted to hold on to her emotional state, because even though I knew what the ending was, you know, I had to get there as a character, because that ending is not necessarily what I as a person would choose. And I had to understand how I can walk in her shoes and end up there as the only possible solution. And preparing it as I did, and speaking with Fatih, working with him on it, every day was a step closer to that ending. But what initially drew me so much to the script, you know, like I said, I don't live in Germany. I hadn't heard about the actual trial that this is based on, that is ongoing in Germany. I've heard vaguely about it, and I knew that neo-Nazis and extreme rightists were, you know, on the uprise everywhere in Europe and in the U.S.
States.
Yeah. So you know, as much I was aware of that, to me, the actual attack is just the motivation of her journey. But, you know, it can be neo-Nazis, it could be jihadists, it could be some crazy shooter, like what happened in Vegas, you know. It doesn't matter really what their motivations are. What I thought was so different about this film is that it is actually a film about grief. And it's a film of how we as people have to deal with this reality that we all live in, which is terrorism in all shapes and forms, and racism. And what it does to people that stay behind. Because we're being reduced, we become nearly numb to what's happening. You know, it's 20 people died, 100 people died. These are the motivations of the killer. But what happens to Katja's? You know, what happens to the people 5 months later, 10 years later? And that's what feels really relevant.
Yeah. How do we process this pain? How do we move forward if we're not helping those that really have to move forward?
Yeah.
And she obviously cannot. I mean, you say that it could be all these different forms of terrorism, but Fatih, I think what your ending really does is try to present a. I mean, to just be honest, I think it tries to present a white audience with the idea what if they were in a situation that so many that are demonized are a situation that they are in. I think globally, quite often.
It helped me to do it with a white person somehow, and it was not like to reach more audience kind of stuff. These were not the questions. The questions were like, the person who is killed in the film is the person.
Yeah.
The person who's killed in the film is like, you know, Turkish, has a background, you know, is not a white guy, you know. So. But to have the idea that the leftover is white, you know, that makes it like accessible for everybody. And you have to know, I mean, this is like my home base is Germany. My main audience is Germany. I'm so happy that the film works here, you know. But in Germany, if she would have been, I don't know, a Turkish woman, the conversation, the dialogue would be focused on you know, like the outsiders in the society. And it's not about outsiders of the society. It belongs to all of us. This shit happens everywhere, you see? And by doing it with Diane and casting Diane, for me it was like a symbol, you know, to make it more global, right?
Make it more global, but also in many ways, hopefully give people some sort of empathy or sympathy for what we deem the outsider usually. And the sort of narrative that is presented about the outsider quite regularly. Let's talk about some of your filmmaking techniques, though. Sorry, I'm switching it up just a bit.
Okay.
Because your courtroom scene, essentially the second act of the film entirely in this courtroom, you do some really beautiful, I think, stylistic work that I wasn't expecting you to sort of do. Specifically, you do a sort of classic zoom in, pull the camera back on Diane in a moment of grief. You have a kind of De Palma-esque moment where someone's reading and they're in focus in the side of the frame and she's in focus. Usually
Split diactor.
Things that are usually reserved, I think, for highly stylized film, but you use to like wonderful effect in the courtroom. What made you use these techniques?
I don't use these techniques like as a gimmick.
No,
right?
I don't think you are. Yeah.
No, in general, it's like all of those shots have to make, I don't know, there must be a psychological reason. I'm always with her. You know, this film is very much in the tradition of films like where you stay with the hero. Mm-hmm. You know, Bresson. You know, you just, it's her perspective. And when I did my research, I was at the real trial. The real trial still goes on in Munich. So, and I went there and I was like, oh my God, this is so boring. You know, I never saw such a boring thing in my whole life. The real trial. So I cannot make it like this for the audience, you know. So I was like, it is boring for me because I'm outside. But if I would be inside, it would not be that boring. So I had to find a way to translate the inner emotion on a visual level.
What exactly is the real trial? Can I ask exactly what the real trial is?
Between 2000 and 2007, 3 terrorists, 2 men and 1 woman, killed several people. They killed 10 people in Germany.
Oh, okay, so this is what we see. Okay.
Yeah. They 9 immigrants and 1 German police officer. You know, they killed them by shooting, but they dropped several bombs. And it was a pure random that nobody died on these bombs. And the real trial, they're caught. 2 of them are dead. The 2 men are dead, and the woman survived, and she's in trial now. And in reality, it's not over yet. But I didn't want to wait until the real trial is over. That's why my film is a bit like its own thing. It's fiction.
It's this. I mean, you were at the trial, and you took certain themes and ideas from that and sort of put them in its own story. Diane, with that in mind, though, how much were you going into this with the actual trial that happened in your head going into shooting?
Again, I didn't really. I mean, I heard about it vaguely. You know, what you hear in the news in France, what I've heard about it. My mother, who lives in Germany, is still telling me about it. But again, for me and for my purposes, I didn't want to be submerged by that because I didn't want to be from the get-go tainted, right? It had to happen to me as it was happening to my character. So I wanted to have fresh ears when I was sitting in court and I was listening to all the proceedings and try to keep it as fresh and this injustice be as terrible as it could be.
So a number of your scenes are you know, just really going through heavy, heavy, heavy grief. How do you prepare yourself for those scenes? What do you do for yourself prior to action?
It's everything.
Faux pas question? That's an okay question.
No,
I don't know if actors hate questions like that.
Yeah, because it's something you can't really explain. It's something you feel. You know, what happens is the preparation beforehand. You know, meeting people. You know, who go through that. Being observant of different stages of grief. And then, you know, as an actor, I think I mean, everybody has empathy, but I think as an actor, we train to allow ourselves to open up so much to what another person is going through and try to take that on while trying to find the truth to that emotion, you know. I felt an acute sense of responsibility because of what I witnessed and what I've been able to observe. And then it's just, you know, being a human being and reacting to the scene as it presents itself. But usually it's all there by the time they call, you know, action. It's the months before that are important.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has a question?
Hi. So I read that the title was influenced by the name of Queens of Stone Age song, and that the lead singer they were involved with the score. How early on was the band involved, or the music involved in the music incorporated into the movie?
There's also a little Mike Patton in the movie, right? Isn't there a Faith No More or a Tomahawk song,
yes,
right? Yeah.
Yes, from the latest album called Superhero. It was not the whole band. It was Josh actually, and he asked. He had a surgery with his hand, so he asked Troy and Schumann to add some music. So two members of the group besides Josh were involved. But it was like, the very first draft of that, I wrote it in the 90s, because we in Germany, we have problems with neo-Nazis, I don't know, since they were Nazis,
You invented that.
We invented the shit, So in the 90s, we had like several attacks.
America's just joining the club now.
Yeah, you get too much influence by us, Don't do that. In the 90s, we had a kind of like rise like today in Germany. When the two Germanys come together, there was like, I don't know, a huge nationalist, atmosphere outside. And at that time, there was the days of grunge music, right? And I was listening to a lot of Caius at that time, So when I wrote it today, I tried to write it with the spirit like of the 90s, right? And so I had the list of like a lot of Queens of the Stone Age songs, especially Queens of the Stone Age, because first they survived, and and on the other hand, it's the perfect melange between aggression and melancholia. The music of the band has these two sides. So I made a list of songs and I give it to Diane, and I said, Diane, I think the character would listen to Queens of the Stone Age.
I got a lot cooler to my friends as I was playing this.
No, you definitely get a sense of this with that music, that this is the music of this couple's life. I mean, maybe now, but really prior to having children, and it's kind of like their classic rock almost that they listen to. Dan, I have to ask, we're talking about American Nazis for a minute. You played Kellyanne Conway in a Funny or Die video this summer. I'll stand by that comment. What was it like playing her?
It was great. I mean, it's a tough act to follow Kate on Saturday Night Live, but I found her fascinating. At first, I was like, really? Do I look like her?
No, not at all.
But I just imagine her as a horny drunk, and I ran with that. So it's fun.
Next question.
What's going on, guys? Trail looks good. I'm still pretty much on edge from it. You two seem to have great chemistry in person as well as it translates on film. Is this going to be a one and done thing, or are you going to continue to work together in the future?
I certainly hope so. I'm counting on it. I would love to. We have a project which is not for tomorrow, but
the day after tomorrow.
The day after tomorrow.
You guys are remaking that movie? Sorry.
How did you know? We were thinking about making a miniseries about Marlene Dietrich.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and that I think I'd be a dream for me to play her, but it's a very specific time in her life. And Fatih being such a modern and really edgy director, I think would bring a whole different, side to what we know about classic biopics. So I'm calling him every day, trying to.
Oh, that is so cool. Who would be your main sort of filmmaker influence going into making a Marlene Dietrich biopic?
It has to be somehow like, it has to be modern, It shouldn't be like too dusty, like, look how beautiful that time period was like, and you fall asleep. Marlene Dietrich was a very sexy person, and she was ahead of her time, and she gave up the period we were interested in. She gave up her whole career in order to fight against Nazi Germany. That was before she went to the war. She went to the front. Before she went there, she was the star, and she gave it all up, and become somehow like a soldier. And it has to, it's something what I'm looking for, what we are looking for, is not really existing yet, Maybe it is, but we haven't seen it yet. So it's...
I'm down. This is a great idea. Please make this.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. Two more questions, right here.
Hi. First of all, thank you for being here, and thank you for being an inspiration for German actors and filmmakers here in the US. And to my question, what would you guys say is the biggest difference of doing a movie in the German film business and in our native language than doing a Hollywood production or in general a production in English, Turkish, or French?
Languages.
I mean, no matter what the language is, it's like everything, the battle is between action and cut, no matter what the language is. And if it's not the language, it's silent movies, but everything between action and cut, or in German we say, und bitte, danke, you know? Please and thank you, you know? This is how we do it there, we're more polite, you know? All the battle is in front of the camera, you know? That's the whole thing. No matter if you do it with your iPhone, with no money, or if you do it like a very huge production, the battle is in front of the camera.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And scale, I mean, the real difference is that obviously Americans, or American movies tend to be much larger in scale because it's a bigger country, so, you know, Europeans don't make $100 million movies, which, you know, is probably a good thing. But that's it, you know. So, you know, we were 50 people on set instead of 150. But.
Do you have less? Did you find that you have less time, or more time is given to the making of the film?
It depends, you know. It depends on the budget. But like, for example, our movie, which cost, I want to say, around $5 million, right? I never felt rushed. We had everything we needed. You know, I don't have my trailer that's as long as this block and my, you know, Apple TV hooked up to, I don't know, you know, but you don't need it, you know. It's all about every single penny is on the screen, and on the other hand, I got to spend real time with the people who make the movies. It really feels like it's a family, you know. On sets that are so big, sometimes you don't even know this person, you know, that brings you lunch or something, you know. Like here, you go to lunch with everybody, you know.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
Hello. Dan, you mentioned how you prepared for the film, and it seemed kind of hardcore. Does it feel like through working with Fatih, you discovered perhaps your mission, or more so rediscovering Germany and kind of like being the voice of what's going on there right now?
No, I felt like I was the voice of people that are not given a voice when it comes to terrorism and when it comes to being the victims of murder or attacks. You know, I definitely felt this responsibility. Whether they think that I am that voice, I don't know. But I felt like like I said, I felt like I was acutely aware that I needed to come as close as I can without having experienced it to convey that emotion.
Guys, I love the film. Congratulations. I love both of your work. In the Fade, when can people see it? How can people see the film?
December 27th.
December 27th in theaters. Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful achievement, a great film, and I think really important, and not in a preachy, pretentious way. It is entertaining above all, and a great film. Congratulations. Round of applause, everybody.
Thank you very much.